Space Shuttle Columbia. On February 1, 2003, the Columbia Space Shuttle was making its usual approach to the Kennedy Space Center after a successful 2-week mission, but shortly before 9 a.m., abnormal readings in mission control indicated that something was wrong. Seconds later, the spacecraft broke apart in the sky. Columbia's first flight took place in April of 1981, the first space shuttle to fly in space, and it completed 27 successful missions in total. On January 16, 2003, the shuttle took off for its 28th endeavor and was tasked with research activities in a routine assignment. However, the first problems arose merely 82 seconds after the spacecraft left the ground, when a piece of foam detached from the external tank structure and pierced the left wing. A later investigation determined that NASA was aware of the incident from the beginning. Several people within the agency demanded to review imagery of the breached wing, now in orbit, to assess the damage and the risk, and even the Department of Defense was ready to employ its orbital spy cameras to look closer. But according to the Columbia Accident Investigation Board, NASA officials in charge of the program dismissed the offers and warnings. The landing then proceeded without further inspection, and when the spacecraft was flying over Dallas at 200,000 feet and 18 times the speed of sound, all communications with the crew were lost, and the readings from the shuttle vanished. Minutes later, Mission Control received a call. A television network was broadcasting the spacecraft as it disintegrated in the air. Search and rescue teams were immediately deployed, and 40% of the shuttle has been recovered to this day. It was also found that the 7-person crew was never aware of any issue, and the authorities reasoned, quote, there's nothing we can do. Don't you think it would be better for them to have a happy, successful flight and die unexpectedly during entry than to stay on orbit, knowing that there was nothing to be done until the air ran out? Soyuz 11. On June 30th, 1971, cosmonauts Georgy Dobrovolsk, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev returned to Earth after a record-breaking 3-week mission in space, but when the rescuers reached the capsule and knocked on the hatch, there was no response. After the Americans landed on the moon, the space race shifted. Now, the Soviets were focused on the development of a space station, and in April of 1971, Salyut 1 was launched. Then, after a first attempt by the Soyuz 10 mission to dock with the space facility, the men of Soyuz 11 were to try again. The original crew consisted of Alexei Leonov, Valery Kubasov, and Pyotr Kolodin, but days before the launch, Kubasov's health was deemed insufficient, and the whole crew was replaced with their backups. The launch took place on June 6th, and the day-long trip to the space station was uneventful. The crew boarded Salyut 1 with few issues and proceeded to carry out numerous experiments. For 3 weeks, the cosmonauts nurtured vegetables, took spectrograms of stars, and photographed the banks of the river Volga. At one point, they even appeared on an evening television broadcast. However, the crew did face some incidents, like the overheating of an instrument that filled some of the station with smoke. Still, it all seemed to be going according to plan during Patsayev's birthday celebration, the first man to celebrate his birthday in space. On the 29th, the spacecraft undocked from the station and was ready to return home for a traditional welcome and a customary gift of cognac. But roughly a half hour before touchdown, charges fired and the capsule detached from the craft. Suddenly, the pressure inside dropped as the air escaped from the capsule. Attempts to contact the crew over the radio were met with silence. The capsule was then detected entering the atmosphere, rekindling hope. After it parachuted to the ground, rescue teams quickly reached the site. However, when the team opened the hatch, they found 3 motionless bodies. Dobrovolsk's body was still warm, but all resuscitation attempts were futile. They became the only humans to perish while in space. Later investigations determined that a faulty valve had sprung open during jettisoning, and from then on, all crews donned pressure suits during launch and landing. Apollo 1. NASA struggled to achieve the goal set by President John F. Kennedy to land a man on the moon by the end of the 60s, but the Apollo program would finally take crewed spaceships to orbit the moon and later land on the satellite. However, it would take a catastrophic event with the Apollo 1 to finally get where they so desperately wanted. On January 27, 1967, a routine launch rehearsal took place for the first Apollo mission. Crew Commander Virgil Gus Grissom had been part of the Mercury 7, and in 1961, he became the second American to travel to space. However, an incident with the hatch door of the Liberty Bell 7 after splashdown tarnished his reputation. Despite repeatedly insisting that he hadn't blown the door, many believed it was his mistake. Still, he later commanded the first Gemini flight and was selected to do the same with Apollo. Next was Ed White, the American astronaut known to have made the memorable 23-minute spacewalk on Gemini in 1965. Roger Chaffee completed the team. He joined the program in 1963, and the Apollo 1 would be his first time in space, which he anticipated, quote, will be a lot of fun. The morning of the rehearsal, the crew donned their suits as usual, but something seemed odd. The breathing oxygen reeked of foul odor. The minor issue took about an hour to fix. Another setback occurred when the communication system malfunctioned. Exasperated, Grissom uttered, quote, how are we going to get to the moon if we can't talk between 2 or 3 buildings? The exercise continued for a while, but at 6:31 p.m., the unthinkable happened. Someone in the spacecraft shouted fire, and technicians raced to try and put it out, while the crew tried to open the door. However, the device was sealed by the same pressure system that was supposed to keep them safe in space. When the door opened, it was too late. The pure oxygen in the atmosphere had fed an unstoppable fire that claimed the lives of the 3 astronauts. After the catastrophe, several changes were made to improve safety conditions, including a redesigned door. Soyuz 1. On April 24, 1967, cosmonaut Vladimir Komarov became the first person to lose his life in a spaceflight. When his capsule's parachute failed, he crashed into the Earth, giving a tragic end to Soyuz's first crewed test flight. However, some investigations suggest there was more to his story. Komarov was a test pilot and aerospace engineer. Though declared medically unfit for spaceflight twice, his perseverance led him to become one of the most experienced and qualified candidates. Alongside Yuri Gagarin, Komarov was chosen in 1967 for the Soyuz Earth-orbiting mission. As told by co-authors Jamie Dornan and Piers Bizzoni in their book Starman, both men were close friends, and both were wary of the new space capsule. Gagarin and several technicians had found over 200 structural problems with the capsule, deeming it highly dangerous. The Soviet hero suggested the mission should be postponed, but authorities would not delay the important milestone, even if it was precarious. Allegedly, Komarov yielded to their wishes, even though he knew he would probably not survive the mission. When asked why he didn't refuse to fly, he explained, quote, if I don't make this flight, they'll send the backup pilot instead. He didn't want to endanger his friend's life, with Komarov remarking, quote, that's Yura, and he'll die instead of me. According to several reports, Gagarin showed up on the day of the launch and demanded a spacesuit, trying to save his friend's life. But the plans continued accordingly, and Soyuz departed the planet with Komarov. Several failures began the moment the cosmonaut reached orbit, and Komarov's chances to return safely dwindled. It is said that U.S. intelligence was eavesdropping from an airbase in Istanbul, and as the vehicle was plunging towards the Earth, they heard Komarov cursing the engineers who had put him in that situation. Space Shuttle Challenger. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded 73 seconds after liftoff. It was its 10th launch that cold morning, and the incident changed NASA's space program forever. However, it was later found that the accident was due to more than just lousy weather. Temperatures that morning in Florida were dipping below freezing, which concerned the engineers. The team of experts worried that the integrity of the seals in the solid rocket boosters was compromised in such unprecedented conditions. But regardless of warnings, the space shuttle launched at 11:38 a.m. The launching drew more attention than usual, as the mission included a civilian in the crew. It was Krista McAuliffe, the first teacher to go to space and give lessons while in orbit. However, the crew never reached outer space, and the spacecraft shattered into pieces in front of television cameras. At that moment, all the NASA launch commentator could voice was, quote, flight controllers here are looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction. A presidential commission was assembled to investigate the matter, and they traced the entire failure to a rubber seal, an O-ring on the boosters that degraded in the cold weather as the experts had predicted. Meanwhile, a report from the House of Representatives pointed to lax safety protocols and unsustainable launch rates as the culprits, and plans to fly civilians to space were shelved.